motion to enter executive session to discuss confidential matters pertaining to the employment or future employment of a particular person or persons and collective bargaining negotiations, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? We're now in executive session. Thank you.
So productive.
Yeah. Everybody ready? May I have a motion to exit executive session, please?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. We're now in regular session. We have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, on the stage.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to stay with flags.
Thank you.
Don't look for the flag.
I believe we have no agenda modifications. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as in the.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. And we're now to Pride. You got one here too.
I know.
Oh, that one doesn't work?
Oh,
I thought maybe you wanted two. Or
no, I just know that they had asked me not to share with you.
I know, but this one is really loud.
Okay, so good evening. Our spring sports are winding down, so I thought it was time for a little bit of a recap, and there's, as usual, much to celebrate, and in fact, we celebrate all the successes of all our teams and all of our students that are involved in extra and co-curricular activities. But the wrap-up is, tennis team had a 10-0 perfect record for the Mahals, and John Ackerman and Dan Considine will represent FDR at the States. I believe it's this coming weekend. So congratulations to the tennis team. Also, to mention, the tennis team, almost in its entirety, volunteers every Saturday in the A-Scene for Autism program, and we'd like to thank the tennis team for their community service in this endeavor. The crew team had a successful season. They were first in the freshman 8 and varsity. Girls senior team finished 5th. The junior 4 made nationals. They are traveling to Princeton this weekend. A team of 4 on our crew team, the junior 4, made it to nationals. They're going to Princeton. And they placed 3rd in the state. The invitational that qualified them for that was in Saratoga. Softball varsity girls had a 15-2 overall record with a 10-0 league record. JV softball finished 15-1, and they're waiting seeding at sectionals as we speak. And the modified softball team to date is undefeated. Track and field. We could go on and on about the track and field for a number of reasons, but this year the girls finished with a record of 3-4. The boys finished with a 7-0 overall record. This year we hosted, for the first time since we have a track and field facility, we hosted the Oval Office First Invitational with 12 teams attending that event. And this past Saturday, it was a picture-perfect day. We hosted the Mahals. We had 17 teams at the Mahal event, and our boys' track and field team came in 2nd out of 17 teams, so congratulations. Varsity lacrosse made it to the semifinal round of sectionals. Mike Lasoyan got the all-league honors. JV lacrosse received the Lacrosse Officials Sportsmanship Award overwhelmingly every time I read about it, that was the comment. So kudos to Nick Clare, the JV lacrosse coach. That is not something that comes lightly, and it was apparently overwhelming and unanimous that there was just no question that they got that award. So congratulations. Varsity baseball earned a berth in Section 9 tournament, and the JV baseball present record is 11-4. So that's the sports wrap-up. I always count on Dan in case I miss anything. This was concert season. Unfortunately, I was double booked for many things, but the concert season was very successful. I did not get to attend the FDR concert that had 2 power outages and went off without a hitch, and from all accounts, it was probably one of the best concerts of the entire year. Both the selection of the music and the quality, incredible. We'll talk a little bit about tenure this evening. We have 2 tenure recipients, and just a wonderful celebration and well-deserved. Our district, specifically North Park, Netherwood, and the Transportation Department host a Relay for Life every year. This year, the Relay for Life, it's held in Rhinebeck because it's an overnight event with campfires, and we're not putting that on our track. We are looking at having a modified Relay for Life next year that will be a student-run event and no camping or fires. But the Relay for Life is May 31st. If you look throughout the district, you will see purple butterflies everywhere. Envelopes and butterflies went around the district for contributions, and you could buy a butterfly for $1, and they're proudly displayed throughout the district. And on May 30th, in honor of the upcoming event the next day, everybody's encouraged to wear purple. I'll let Lisa explain a little bit more, but today was Promising Pals Day at North Park Elementary, a tradition that began at Hyde Park Elementary and continued with the consolidation. I believe it was YNN News that was here, filming and interviewing. I'll let Lisa go into details later. It was an extraordinary event. I got to meet my promising pal, and I hope he stays with us all the way straight through. And that concludes my portion of Pride, and I know some of the board members may want to.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the concert on Tuesday for a moment. It didn't bode well when we arrived and the lights were out. I happened to see the Director of Fine and Performing Arts, Paul Scantinato, and it may be the first time that I've ever seen Paul look the least little bit worried. But over the course of the next 20 minutes, the lights came on, the concert started, and blew me away. I have a long history of music training in my own past. I've been in several performing groups, including choirs, bands, and so forth. And this was probably the best high school concert I have ever been to. The level of musicianship was off the charts. It was, in many ways, a collegiate level performance. I was particularly interested by the full orchestra and their performance of Holst's Jupiter. There was a clarinet solo by Craig Slagle, which is extraordinary, and in parts he it was a duet with his brother Dalton, and then there was a trumpet trio, and the select chorus lined up in such a way that they were not in sections, scattered formation, and the blend and tonality, dynamic control was extraordinary. It was interesting that as the select chorus was wrapping up their last number, the lights went out, and other than that, nothing happened. Dynamics didn't change. Nobody made a noise that wasn't part of the song. It was, like I said, an extraordinary evening.
Anybody else?
I'll just comment that I missed the first, the Oval Office Invitational, but I did get to the Mahals. I had a busy day, but I went up there around 10:30 and planning on staying till 12. I got out of there at 4:30. Now, I have a history of running 7 years of track in New York City, and I want to talk to Brian about how I got from the slums, so he got to the hoity-toities of it. That's the most fantastic facility I've ever seen, and it ran like clockwork. And I'll give his wife total credit for doing it and keeping him on the narrow, because if he didn't have a nervous breakdown, it had to be somebody else's influence, because I ran into him a dozen times before the Oval Office and several times before the Mahals, and he was an absolute wreck. And he does owe you a trip to the CIA.
Okay. And we have the Superintendent's Report. Or, I'm sorry, tenure recognition.
Tenure recognition.
Sorry, tenure.
I was going wherever you were heading. So tonight, as I mentioned earlier, we're very proud to honor 3 well-deserving teachers and grant them tenure in our district. Tenure's not a given. We scrutinize all teachers who are at that point in their career very carefully. And I have to say that all 3 on the agenda tonight are what we call rock stars. It was unequivocally the easiest tenure recommendations. All 3 of these individuals have contributed significantly to the improvement of our schools, our culture, our community over the 3 years that we've been here. So the 3 tenure recipients are Brian Halling, who is not here, but his wife is here with us. And Brian sent a message. He's with our track and field team waiting to see if the rain stops at invitationals down in Middletown. So he regrets that he was unable to make it, but he sent a message. Dear members of the Board of Education, I want to thank you for the decision you're making tonight, along with the decision years ago that I've been in the district. I appreciate every day working with everyone towards a bright future for our school district. Thank you for all, and I look forward to accomplishing so much more in the years to come. So that was from Brian. We have Sarah Feldman, and we just had a tenure reception, and it was actually in Sarah Feldman's room. Sarah is our library media specialist here at North Park Elementary. She stepped into big shoes and took them into all kinds of undiscovered territory and new places, and we're just thrilled to have Sarah with us. And the last person who was also unable to make it is Dan Hushin. He works also at FDR. He's in our special education department, and he is also one of our coaches. So it is with extreme pleasure and pride of the district that we put you on this agenda for tenure.
I think we give everybody.
So Sarah, give us a wave. Sarah, if you could stand up and wave for the public. There you go. Channel 22. And Christine Hallen, could you stand up and give a wave on behalf of your husband?
All right, you have a report to
Yes.
go to?
Okay, so are we at Superintendent's Report now?
Yep.
Okay. I have a few items of note that don't necessarily belong on an agenda but can come under Superintendent's Report. The first, it will go on an agenda if it's approved, but we have officially, not we, I will tell you about the individual in a minute, but an application for Violet Avenue School to be on the National Historic Register has been filed. There's a young gentleman by the name of Weston Davey that works for the FDR Library and Museum, and just as part of his interest in our community and in the process of going through the National Historic Register, he did this in his after hours. So he approached us well over a year ago and said he was interested in doing this project for free. And all he would need from us is some access to the building, some access to some documents, and he would take care of the rest. I have been informed by the New York State Office of Record that it is on file and it goes through the national and state registers. And so we're hoping that we receive notification. If not, we really would like to thank Weston Davey for making that effort and going through that process. And no relation to my maiden name, but he spells it the same way, so that was interesting. So I will get that on an agenda if Violet Avenue makes it onto the National Historic Register. It came up at our last meeting, the topic of naming of facilities, and there was a mention of if we would name the track. And the board policy is 7,500, and that policy states that it is fully within the board's area of responsibility to name facilities as they deem appropriate. So if we want, we can put it on a future agenda to have a formal discussion on that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we'll put that on the next agenda. It is fully within your authority.
Oval Office, home of the presidents.
That's right.
And
Said we didn't have any power.
Astor Head Start, do you want me to do it, or do you want to do it?
Breakfast or the
Ralph R. Smith.
renting? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So we are in the process of being able to lease a classroom at Ralph R. Smith for Astor Head Start next year. So it's one classroom, less than 20 young students who would be coming for part day. And, we're very excited about the opportunities for transition to kindergarten for the students. Priority would be given to Hyde Park School District students. Right now, Astor Head Start has a waiting list, so this might give an opportunity to Hyde Park students to have quality preschool they wouldn't otherwise have. And of course, the chance to have them see what our expectations are for kindergarten and all the grade levels. And, they come fully equipped with their own program. So it's really, at no cost or detriment to the district and a lot of benefit.
Very good. So if that comes to fruition, that will be on a future board agenda. I'd like to publicly thank the town of Clinton for permitting us to use their town hall to give an informational session on our budget, and also a customized presentation to help them understand their portion of our budget process. We had about 60 people attend, and it was a very well-received event, and people were very respectful, and a lot of people were very thankful that we came out and met them where they were. So I really want to thank the town of Clinton people for welcoming us to deliver our budget presentation. An announcement, we have, as part of the Rotary Youth Exchange, we are now in our third year, I believe, of foreign exchange students. This year we have Eli Berkowitz, who's in Brazil for the year. We have a student from Taiwan, Jenny Wu. The year before, we had one of our own students go to Taiwan. And for next year, our outgoing student is also going to Brazil for the year, Ethan Pine. And we just received word that we will be receiving a student from France, a 16-year-old boy named Alex, and we are in search of host families for Alex. We need 3 host families. He will stay with host families for approximately 3 months so that they stay with 3 different families. There's a whole process, but if anybody is interested in hosting Alex, one of the few requirements that they do have is they have a lot of requirements, but we'll go through that if you're interested. But one of the things you need to know going in is they really want the exchange student to have their own bedroom, because there is so much to acclimate to in coming to a foreign country that, that kind of space is needed. But if anybody is interested, they can contact me directly, and I will help them through that process. So we do have Alex coming for the entire year next year, and we can't wait to meet him. Last is May 28th is our public forum on community use of our facilities. There are 3 sessions. You can sign up by clicking on the website to attend one of those sessions. There is limited seating. I come in and do the welcome, and then I'm not in the room at all. K-12 Insight will facilitate the forum. And this is just to really reach out to the community. We've extended invitations to every organization that we could to say, what would you like to use? How do you envision using it? And also trying to find out how to explain to people what our parameters are. So this would involve everything from how do we use an elementary school library or computer lab or a stage. And, you know, we do have some rules and regulations, but we really just want to start the dialogue about how do we engage the community in the use of our schools and our facilities. So if you're interested in attending one of those forums, please see our website. And that concludes my informal reports.
Thank you. Now we have the budget vote and board member election results. If you haven't seen it in the paper or on our website, the budget did pass at 1260 yes votes to 727 no votes. And the bus proposition 2 also passed, 1267 to 719. I was reelected, and Jeff Donaldson had the overwhelming write-in count of the night, so he will be joining us next year, and I've already asked him to join us at the table starting at the next meeting so that he can get acclimated to the process and get the stage fright out of your thing, you know, because of the camera, you know. And actually, Steve, if you could pan to Jeff so that the public knows what he looks like. Please.
Be targeted from now on.
Yeah.
And his phone number is, oh no, I'm sorry.
It'll happen soon enough.
Thanks, Jeff. You're a good sport. And now we will have the North Park presentation. And Lisa Hack.
First, I'd like to welcome everyone to North Park, so happy to have you here. I also would like to take a moment to congratulate all of the tenure recipients, but of course, especially our own Sarah. We're delighted that you're here. Is this my presentation? So first, I would just take a moment to talk a little bit about our achievement data. These are the results from last school year. We obviously just finished doing the state assessments this year and don't have the results yet. In the first set of results are the ELA scores, the English Language Arts scores for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. If you look at the first column, which is students that were considered proficient based on having achieved a 3 or 4 on the assessments, you can see the numbers, 30% in 3rd grade, 12% in 4th grade, 29% in 5th grade. We also are reporting out the students who received a 2, 3, or 4, and those numbers look a lot better. 70, 57, and 56%. Moving over to math, interestingly, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, in each grade, the percent proficient was 17. And then in 2nd, 3rd, and for the 2s, 3s, and 4s, it's 60, 62, and 53.
Yeah, Lisa, I'll just add that the reason why we're doing 2, 3, and 4 is because when the state messed around with the test, they said that proficient is 2, 3, and 4 because they are having issues with the fallout of telling, you know, the entire state of New York that they're not proficient, so.
Exactly. And then our science scores, however, are, have been consistently strong. And again, last year, 91% of our 4th graders were proficient on the state assessments.
But they can't read, that's why.
This year, I have no idea, obviously, what our results will be. If there will be improvement in the numbers, that remains to be seen. I can tell you that based on the amount of time I've been in classrooms and the work that we've done at grade level meetings and faculty meetings, I feel really confident that we have been implementing Common Core to a very high degree, given that it was our first year with full implementation. And I do see richer, deeper instruction and learning happening both in ELA and math. One other little piece of information, this time last year, K-5 together, kindergarten through 5th grade, 54% of our students were at or above benchmark on the reading assessment that we use, the Fountas and Pinnell benchmark assessment for reading. And at this time, this year, it was 64%. So that feels like pretty solid growth. Not where we want to be yet, but heading definitely in the right direction. Our BLT was standing strong this year. We started the year with really a brand new BLT. We have 5 parent members, 5 staff members, and the staff members include, principal, teaching assistant, teachers, aide. We have really the gamut. And we decided at the beginning of this year that our first priority was to actually establish ourselves as a team. It was a brand new group. And so we decided to shoot for a 2-year plan, and that our first priority was to, say, form a team, digest our data, really get a good understanding of what our needs were as a building, and that to actually write the plan towards the end of the first year rather than at the beginning of the year. That being said, we looked at it as a 2-year plan so that we go into next year already with a plan in place. So our second goal was to look at engagement, student and parent engagement. In the course of looking at those goals, we had done some data analysis. These are just a few of the things that we looked at. We certainly used the focus survey that was done district-wide, as well as the follow-up focus survey. Every other year, I give a survey to the staff here based on recommendations of the 90, 90, and 90 research, which is Doug Reeves' work. 90% schools where 90% of the students are below the poverty line or receive free and reduced lunch, 90% minority, and yet 90% still achieving proficient scores. So that's work that we've been relying on for our strategic plan for several years now, including in our strategic plan. So we looked at that and then looked at our student achievement data. Some of the additional resources, again, the strategic plan. We did a book study of the book Everyday Engagement by Kathy Ridnour, and then we actually did some reading of the study itself. One of the things that is very important to us here at North Park is our character education program. We call it Healthy Highways. It's actually a 3-pronged approach. It's character education, nutrition education, and fitness education. We use the analogy of the body as being like a car on the road. So we have to follow the rules of the road. We need to put good, healthy fuel into our body, and we need to make sure that we maintain our bodies well. We have assemblies about every 6 weeks. We choose a theme, a street, a road that we're following for that period of time and apply it across the board. So example is most recently we were traveling on Stamina Street. It was something that we talked about as part of our Read Across America, the need to maintain stamina to work our way through our book minutes all the way across the United States. We talked about stamina in approaching the state assessments, that to maintain your energy level. We talked about stamina as being part of May's Fitness Month, and we consistently talk about the need to maintain a good fuel source, good nutritious fuel source. These are just a small sample of activities that are pretty uniquely North Park, although some are now being replicated. As Dr. Rychek mentioned, we had our Promising Pals Tea today, which was a really delightful event. I must say the tradition that came with the students from Hyde Park Elementary was really a rich tradition, and it was a big leap last year when we went from 35 or so pals to 80 This year, we have 97 fifth grade students, so we were able to find 97 members of the community who were willing to come to exchange pen pal letters and then willing to come and meet their pals today at the T. The purpose of the program is to connect students with people in professions that they have an interest in. And by listing out the pals that they could choose from and the professions that they could choose from, it just helps kids to think beyond just what they already know and consider other options. I had my own pal today, and he became my assistant principal for the afternoon, and that was great fun for both of us, I have to say. We do a family fitness night where we invite families to come. Margaret Robley, our PE teacher, heads this up, designs activities for families to come and do together. We have a science night for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, which is actually coming up. We actually have one of our parents from whose student left, graduated from North Park or moved up from North Park my first year, so 9 years ago. He still comes back every year to run the station where we make ice cream with nitrogen, liquid nitrogen. So it's delightful that he comes back year after year. We do our winter workshops, an activity the last day before our winter break. Violet Avenue is actually doing that as well now, where students get to join in they get to select 4 out of, this year I think we had 32 workshops to attend during the course of the day in all kinds of craft activities, juggling, basketball, all kinds of things for them to pick from. We had a great experience this year with the Circus Project. The PTA provided this opportunity for our students through their enrichment fundraising. We had 2 members of the Circus Project, former circus performers themselves, spend a week with us. They were able to work with every class in the building at least once, but our 5th graders became our circus performers. They rehearsed every day and then put on a circus at the end of the week, first for the students during the day and then for the parents at night. We had students stilt walking and juggling and dancing and tumbling, and it was amazing what the students were able to learn in a week. And they did some great writing about it afterwards. And PTA events that are too numerous to list, but we have a very active, solid PTA at North Park, and we've done many, many, many wonderful events. In addition, as I mentioned, the PTA is very active. We've had a number of evening activities. As I mentioned earlier, we did Read Across America again this year, where students by grade level were given an assigned number of minutes per night, and every time they read for the kindergarten and 1st grade, for example, it would be 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes of reading, they got to color in one of the states on a map of the United States. And the goal was by the end of 5 weeks to have colored in the entire map. Students that did do that and submitted their map got a free book from the PTA out of the book fair. So that was exciting. There was also an incentive if we had approximately 25,000 states, which represented 1 map per student, that there would be a special performance. And the staff and I dressed in costume and lip-synced and danced to What Does the Fox Say, if any of you have seen that, much to the delight of the children, I have to say. We do a pre-K program at North Park during every Thursday in the month of May. Our students who are going to be coming in as kindergartners in September get to come for an hour on Thursdays and get to be a little bit familiar with the building. They go to the library, they have a snack in the cafeteria, they do a craft activity, just to help with that transition. PTA provides grade level grants to each grade level, and I'll just give you an example. One of the ways that the grant is being used this year is our 3rd graders receive ponds from Mohonk Project, where we have a fish tank in every classroom, but it's set up as a pond habitat, and the PTA helps make that possible. Mrs. Feldman has made great use of recruiting some solid volunteers, parents who come in and volunteer in the library. We previously had teaching assistants that helped in the library. Those are no longer in place, and so Mrs. Feldman has become really creative in having parents come and join us for that. I guess that's it. If there are any questions, if not, the last thing I did want to mention is if anybody is interested, on June 24th, North Park is being represented at the Renegades game down in Dutchess Stadium. We're honoring Margaret Robley, who was the recipient of the Eastern Region of the United States Phys Ed Teacher of the Year. She'll be throwing out the first pitch. And it is a fundraiser for North Park as well. So we invite everybody to come down to the Renegades game on the 24th. If you're interested, let me know, because there's a way to get to the websites to make sure that they know that the ticket has been purchased for, on behalf of North Park. So thank you, everyone.
Okay. We will now have another shot at an A+.
Well, they just said 6 slides and 6 bullets, not 6 minutes. No, you don't have to rush.
Just or it's together. It's one presentation.
Okay. All right. Now you can start timing me.
Okay.
All
No,
right.
we don't time.
Doug does.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So tonight I'm going to speak briefly about the school report card, and much of the data that's embedded in it is information that you have received and that we've talked about in the last year, but I did want to go over a few things. So within the school report card are pieces of information on fiscal accountability, our demographics, performance on the state assessments, of course, the accountability measures and graduation rates, as well as post-graduation plans. Tonight, I won't focus on the fiscal accountability. That's really Wayne's department, but I will share some of the other information.
And while Cora's moving on to the next slide, I thought I would just, and she doesn't get docked for this time, but the reason why we're doing it tonight is that every year the state has an annual official release of the data statewide, and that just happened. So I just wanted to explain we weren't doing this out of a vacuum, but now for the first time this information became public about 3 weeks ago. So thank you, Cora.
Good, thank you. And we do get a report card for both the district and each of the individual buildings. So in most cases, what I'm sharing with you is district-wide data, and where it differs, I'll let you know. So certainly 2 of the populations of students that we have been most concerned about, both in terms of performance and equity of programs and opportunity, are our students in need of special education services and our students who are economically disadvantaged. And what you can see is that we continue to have a classification rate that is a little bit above the statewide average. And our students who are economically disadvantaged, the number of those students has continued to rise over the last several years, and we are now at 44%. We've looked at our graduation and dropout data with a pretty close eye over the last years, and for the, and I should be clear, this data is based on the 12-13 school year. So in the 12-13 school year, our students who did not complete with their cohort in general ed were 4% of our students and 6% of our students with disabilities. I want to indicate that for the students with disabilities, that's a lower number than we've seen in many years. So there is a little bit of improvement there. Let me just explain this chart as best I can. There have been some changes to the way the school report card is published. And so for the first time, very clearly, the document distinguishes the district performance and the state average. So as you see, I've provided 2 years. So it's the 11-12 school year and the 12-13 school year. And for each grade in ELA and math, you see both the district percent of students achieving a 3 and a 4 on the assessments and the state. And if you take a look, you can see that in some cases we're fairly comparable to the state, and in others we are well below. And this is data that we've been taking a look at. Just a reminder for anyone in the audience or watching at home, in the 11-12 school year, it was the first time that the Common Core assessments were really being rolled out. And it's interesting because I spent 4 days last week in Albany with the Network Team Institute, which is a group of educators from all over the state working with state ed faculty, people from the regions, people from the different groups that have developed the modules to support the Common Core. And one of the things that was made very clear was that the modules that we're now asking teachers to implement have been written assuming that students are at a 4th grade level, for example, as described in the standards, in the new Common Core standards. There is a recognition and a realization that those students have not been exposed to the Common Core until last year a little bit, this year much more so. So in a sense, it was reassuring to have that verbalized in such a large community of educators and administrators, because it made us all feel a little bit like, okay, you get that, you understand it. We still would have liked the rollout of Common Core to come well before the rollout of the assessments, but so be it. At least there's discussion and conversation about that reality. This is the percent of students achieving 3s and 4s on the Regents exams. And again, you'll see how our performance compares to that of the state average. And there's a much closer, certainly, correlation in our Regents exam data than there is on the 4th and 8th grade assessments, or the 3-8 assessments, I should say. You may wonder about the science at the bottom, because we certainly offer more than one Regents exam in science. For that piece of data this year, they put all of the science assessments together. Why, I'm not sure, and if you would like it broken out by particular exam, I can do that for you. But I wanted to let you see the way it was reported by the state, both for us and for the statewide data. So accountability is certainly on our minds all the time, and you hear us over and over again talk about whether or not we met AYP, or adequate yearly progress. And what that really means is that the state examines the growth our students made on a particular assessment at a particular grade level, and both in terms of comparing that performance to the prior year in our district and comparing that performance to similar groups of students across the state. There is a measure of whether or not we progressed the way we would have been expected to, based on those two pieces of data. And it's interesting in the math, in the math and in the 3 through 8 tests, I'll come to that in a second. But positive news is that for all of our groups of students in grade 3 through 8 on the English Language Arts assessment, we met what the state identified as adequate growth. So while our results are not anywhere near where we want and need them to be, we are making progress, and that's being recognized. For the first time in many years, we also met adequate yearly progress for all groups for graduation rates. You may recall that in the past, for our students with disabilities, we have not met AYP every year. There have been some years where we have not met it for our students who are struggling economically. So also good news that all of our different groups met adequate yearly progress in that area. The areas in which we did not make adequate growth. For the first time in Hyde Park, in the area of math on the grade 3-8 assessments, we did not make the progress expected for our students who self-identify as white. And there's a lot of hypothesis about that across the state, because it's more prevalent this year than in other years. Some are guessing that it may have to do with refusals. There's still some research being done on the number of refusals and who those refusals might be. And I should just make sure I'm very clear that that's a hypothesis at this time. I can't say that that accounts for the difference in Hyde Park, but there is a lot of conversation across the state about that phenomenon. Our students in 4th and 8th grade who took the science assessment, who also received special education services, did not make the growth. It was very, very close, but we did not meet the AYP there. And then in high school, both our ELA and math assessments continue to be most challenging for our students with disabilities, our students who identify as African American, and our students who are economically disadvantaged. Our students who do receive free and reduced lunch did make the progress expected in ELA, so it was the math this time that was particularly troubling. I should also say that normally when I'm able to share the accountability, I'm also able to share with you our status. Are we a focus school? Are we a school in need of improvement? Depending on which terms are being used in a given year. The state is currently in the midst of determining how they're going to use all this data for that purpose. So I'll come back as soon as we have that information, but at this point, all we know is the areas in which we made or did not make adequate yearly progress. We don't know yet what it means for us for next year. So the graduation rate is the only set of data that I included building-specific information. And again, the way the report was put together this year is a little bit different than in the past. So what you see first is our district data, inclusive of all students who belong to Hyde Park, whether they attend FDR or BOCES or wherever they may be. And then in parentheses is the data just for FDR. And this data is based on a 4-year cohort. And in a couple of cases, it changes when we look at students who may have graduated but represented a 5-year cohort. So for example, if we look at all of our students in that 4-year cohort, 80% was our graduation rate. When we look just at the students that were in our building, it's 83. And you can see the rest of those. I wanted to give you a little bit of comparison, although it's not included in this school year report card. If we were to look at just our economically disadvantaged students, again, we've been tracking that over the years. For the overall, district-wide, the year before this, it was 50%. So from 50% to 74%. In that same time for FDR alone, it was also 50%. So for our students who are in that category, we saw a dramatic increase in the graduation rate. For our students with disabilities, that's another area that we've been tracking so closely. We had in the previous year 22% students with disabilities, and it was 48 for last year's cohort. And there was a 10% increase in the graduation rate just at FDR for that same population. So we went from 48 to 58 there. The students graduating with advanced designation, you can see the statewide average there. I don't know the rhyme or reason for statewide averages to be reported in some areas and not in others. So I included it where it was there. Students graduating with advanced designation, statewide average is 30%. We were just above it, so we're certainly happy about that as well. We are always curious, and members of this board have asked in the past about students and their post-graduation plans, and some of that was reported this year. We get a fairly low response, but there were 123 students who responded to the surveys. 117 of those in general ed and 6 students with disabilities. 40% of them reported that they were planning to attend a 4-year college and 42 to a 2-year. So we've got a good 82% that are planning to go to college of one type or another, and another 1% planning to attend some other kind of post-secondary educational institute. with 2% of our students planning to enter the military. What we continue to wonder about is much longer-term results. So how many of those students who enter graduate, and in how much time do they graduate? But this is the data that is available to us, so I certainly wanted to make sure that you had a chance to see that. All of this data is timely for us because we're in the process of revising our strategic plan. So, you know, the connection between the school report card and the Common Core is clear. All of those assessments are based now on the Common Core. 2 of our Regents exams this year are Common Core assessments. You'll see in my journal this week a reference to June 2nd. And on that date, our students in 11th grade English and in integrated algebra will be for the first time taking a Common Core Regents exam. Our expectation, which we've expressed to students and families and staff since the fall, is that students take both. The Common Core assessment is the first week of June. The more traditional, if you will, assessment is during the regular Regents period. We want students to take both, and then the higher of the 2 scores goes on their transcript. The reason for asking them to do both is that it's excellent baseline information. We want to know how our students are doing so that we can take a look at how well we're implementing the modules. The other reason to do it is that the state will be doing standard setting, and the larger the population of students participating, the more accurate the standard setting will be, so that students' scores are really reflective of the performance across the state. So all of this information will be shared with strategic planning next week and be used to really inform our planning for the next couple of years. So, questions?
Any questions?
I had one. I noticed in one of the early slides, the demographics, there was a bullet about high school non-completers. General education was 4%. Students with disabilities was 6%. Later in the presentation, you talked about graduation rates. Those were much closer to 80%. So upon first glance, it looks like we're looking at opposite sides of the same coin, but I suspect that there are different definitions for those 2 pieces of data.
There are, and for the non-completers, it's based just on the students in that graduating year, 2013. For the other, it looks at a 4-year cohort and a 5-year cohort. So if we're looking at the students who were in the 2009 cohort, that means they entered 9th grade in 2009, 10, 11, 12, we would have expected them to graduate in 2013. That set of data is treated differently than all of the students who graduated in 2013, because that group could have included students who graduated early. It could have included students who graduated in 5 years instead of 4. So the 2 don't always match exactly. Does that help?
That gets me close.
Gray, okay.
So the numbers that were hovering around 85% later in the presentation, those were based on 4-year completion rates.
Correct.
Okay, so that's not saying that only 80% of a cohort that started in 2009 graduated. It's saying that only 80, you know, I'm picking a number out of the air.
Okay.
80% graduated in 4 years.
Yes.
There are a number of those students who will go on to graduate in 5 or may
Yes.
have graduated early.
That's correct.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? I actually have a question. I think you said adequate yearly progress was measured by comparable districts, by your comparing us against a comparable district in the state that...
Comparable students, and it's
Comparable
changing a
students.
little bit. There was, well, I'll let you finish your question first.
Well, my question was, actually was a comment leading to this comment. It was,
Okay.
I would rather see what our percentages were based on comparable school districts rather than on the state average, since you can have some really top-performing districts and some really low
Right.
ones. So the average doesn't mean a whole lot. I would be more interested in how other districts that compare to us in demographics and socioeconomics,
Right.
how we compare to them.
Yeah.
Is that something that can be found, or is that not easy?
It can. I would suggest that the way the accountability system is shifting, it's actually doing better even than that, in my view. So there are two ways that the accountability is being assessed. The first is district progress. So how did our cohort of students do compared to the cohort of students before them? So we all know the problems with that because it's not student growth necessarily. Right. But that is one way, at least, of looking at how are you doing in district year to year. That's one set of data. The state average data, for accountability purposes, has shifted, and it's much more complex than it was at one time. And it's the same way that it's done for purposes of teacher accountability. So if you bear with me, I'll take a group of students. We talk about the current fifth graders, and we look at their performance on the ELA assessment that they just took, and then we look at those students and compare the scores students got as fourth graders. So the first thing we identify is, how did these fourth graders do, and now how have they done as fifth graders? What's their standard score, or their raw score? Start with that. Mm-hmm. Then they look at other students just like them across the whole state, and they drill down to the point of separating out. So let's say we have all of the students who got 25, just because it's simple. We look at all the other students who got a 25 as fourth graders, and we look at what the average students who got a 25 across the state get now as fifth graders. So how much progress did they make? That's too big if we remember how complex our kids are. So then we say, all right, take all the kids who got a 25 in fourth grade, look at how they did as fifth graders, but let's only now compare for students who have an IEP and are receiving special ed services. Let's only compare the kids who got a 25 and received special ed services to other kids who got a 25 and received special ed services. Or even further, you got a 25, you received special education services, and you're on free reduced lunch. Then you're only compared to kids who have that profile. And it works the same way across the spectrum. So your very high-performing students are compared to other students who got a very high score last year, and they look at whether or not there was growth and compare them. So statistically and in terms of the math modeling that's being used, it's much more sophisticated than it was, which I think for many gives greater confidence and credibility to at least the way the teacher composite scores are crafted. And then, like I said, the big question right now is how are they using all of that to determine accountability status? And that we don't know yet.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help at all, Doug? Does it clarify how the comparisons are done?
I'll have to think about it for a while.
Yeah, it's messy, and I'd be happy to explain it further.
Anybody else have a question? Thank you, Cora.
You're welcome.
May I have a motion to enter public participation, please?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We are now in public participation, and anybody who wishes to address the board, please come up to the mic and ask whatever you want. Okay. May I have a motion to exit public participation, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. me just get my machine working here. I hate these pads. There we go. Okay, I don't believe we've got anything actually we were going to discuss on board discussion. Let me just make sure. But this is the time. Is anybody any topic that the board failed to give us ahead of time? We'll entertain any discussion and then beat you on the wrist for not telling us ahead of time. Okay, so we have nothing on that. And we'll go to 10.1, the adoption of policies 1530, 4321, 4321.3, 4321.7, 4321.8, 4340, 5300.10, 5300.30, 5300.60, 5300.70, 5400, 5420, 9125.1, and 9540.
So moved.
As listed in the agenda. I have a motion
So moved.
to adopt.
Second.
Do you have a second?
Yeah.
Yes. Any discussion?
Guess mine doesn't count.
Any discussion on any of the policies? All those in favor? Thank you very much. May I have a motion for the consent agenda as listed in the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I think we've already mentioned tenure, so that we've handled that part. And I don't think there was anything else that needed to be mentioned. All those in favor? And opposed? Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, let's get down. We're down to special ed. I have a motion for 12.1, special education placements.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Quick summary, there were 37 meetings presented to us for approval. 36 of them were reviews of programs for the CSE. All are to be continued, and 2 of those students are outplaced, and 1 is parentally placed within a district, but in a non-public school. And the CPSC presented us with 1 program that was continued.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. May I have a motion for 12.2, consultant agreements for special education services?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. May I have a motion for 12.3, capital project change orders and allowance access as noted in the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I just point out for the public that this is one of the change orders where we're actually getting money back. So this is a good thing. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. May I have a motion for 12.4, increased hours for the nurses position at Haviland Middle School?
So moved.
Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Doug, that was the secretary's position in the nurse's office, not the nurse's position.
Oh, I'm sorry, the secretary, yeah. I read ahead and not, thank you, Dave. So we already voted, right?
Well, I don't know. I want to change my
Abstain.
vote now.
Yeah, you want to change your vote, right? Let's see.
Should have read the agenda.
I'm keeping my record intact by messing at least one
One up, yeah.
for the,
Perfection is too early.
Yes, I know.
Got to leave you room for growth.
may I have a motion for 12.5, the code of conduct?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. 13.1. May I have a motion for public participation, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We're back in public participation. If you missed your chance the first time, you have a chance again. No takers. May I have a motion to exit public participation, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Are there any board subcommittee reports?
The Special Ed Subcommittee met last Monday, and that will be our last meeting in this current school year. And I want to thank the Aviva and Heather and the other group I've met with. The meetings have gone smoothly. They've answered all our questions, and they've done a good job of keeping it going and keeping us abreast of what's going on.
Thank you. Any others? We did have a tech meeting where we discussed the upgrades being made to all the buildings and the infrastructure for compliance with testing standards that keep getting pushed back another year. But I think that's a good thing because we're getting ready. We learned that in doing the work, we found places that needed to be upgraded, which were done as they went along. For the phone systems, they required drops into every room, and in some buildings, they were daisy changed from one room to the next room to the next room, which wasn't acceptable, so they just pulled new wires. But anyway, the work is going very well, and just about complete, right?
Couple weeks, yeah.
So that was that.
I can also say we had a energy committee, subcommittee, of which we had a short meeting at district office, and then we had the pleasure of going over and touring at Haviland Middle School some of the improvements that were made recently in the heating system. Where we had problems this winter, and some of the new piping, valves, a whole series of all the work that was done. It was good to see that had been completed. And at the same time, we got to see some of the parts that are still in need of replacement, which heat exchanger pumps. And I mean, we're still, we've got a lot of good stuff that we did, but there's still, unfortunately, a lot yet to be done. So,
Well, I'd like to make comment on that.
Sure.
Obviously, the energy consultant is effective because in the buildings I've been in, people would come up to me and say, "She was here again." And now we have to do this.
yeah.
That's a good thing, so it is working. So,
Yes, yep. There were definitely signs of that, and just a good heightened awareness throughout the district.
Right, any other? Okay, upcoming meetings. Wednesday, May 28th is the FDR Awards Night. It's a wonderful experience, especially for the students and the parents, and highly worthwhile going to. Thursday, May 29th is the district leadership team meeting at 6 o'clock at the administration office. Wednesday, June 4th, facility steering forum at 5 p.m. at the administration office. Thursday, June 12th is the next Board of Education meeting, which would be at Netherwood Elementary School at 7 o'clock. We have no need for a second executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? We're now adjourned. Thank you very much.